dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle, and let's begin exploring the wine glass. Today, I am virtually traveling to Spain and am discussing everything Albarino. I am chatting with Diego Rios, winemaker for Bodegas Granzaban in one of my all-time favorite wine regions, Rias Baixas. I continue to dream of visiting what is known as Green Spain, and hopefully one day that dream will come true. While you are listening, take a moment to rate and review Exploring the Wine Glass. Ratings are now available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and Audible. Taking 1 minute of your time is the only way that the algorithms will suggest Exploring the Wine Glass to others, and since you're enjoying the podcast, other wine lovers will too. If you aren't familiar with Rias Baixas, this podcast will make you want to go out and grab a bottle of Albarino. If you are already familiar with Rias Baixas, then you still aren't going to want to miss this podcast because Diego shares what makes the region so special. Slancha! Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, someday service, champagne specialist, and WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Allure of the Poor, sponsored by Dracaena Wines. I am your host, Lori, WSET Level 2 graduate, a UC Davis winemaking graduate, champagne specialist, and Côte d'Ivoire specialist. And I wish I was a Rias Baixas specialist, and I kind of think I am because I am a maniac when it comes to Rias Baixas, and Albarino is my go-to wine. And I am so excited today because I have Diego Rios of Granzaban here today, and we are going to be talking Albarino. So welcome.
Thanks so much for having me.
I really am a maniac when it comes to Albarino. I think I found Rias Baixas. I think I found it about 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. And I was doing it was an educational program called Wine Studio. And they asked if I wanted to participate. And I'm like, I've never even heard of this place. I don't know Albarino, but sure, I'll do it. And oh my God, it was a 4-week program and we had different wines every week and I was blown away every week. And I have become a maniac. And literally, if we go to a party, it's Albarino I bring. If we go to a restaurant and I'm trying to introduce people to wine, it's Albarino. So I am so excited to have you here. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. And thank you for being such a great ambassador about the brand.
Absolutely. You don't have to twist my arm for that. So my first question always when I talk to somebody in the wine industry, winemakers, is what is your wine origin story? There's always so many interesting ways that the path that somebody has found to the wine world. So how did you get to the wine world?
Well, actually, I have no wine background. There's no wine background in my family either. I did my studies in agricultural science. And in the very last year of my studies, I decided to go in a more like a fruit production direction, or maybe table grape productions or citrus production or something like that. And then I found out that actually the concentration in winemaking and enology was not very far away from the thing that I wanted to do. So I decided to take the courses. And that's why I got trapped, and I mean forever, I guess. Well, I have been working in wine maybe for the last 11, 12 years since I jumped into studies and internships and everything. And so now I'm pretty much into it and made a career out of it. A short one, of course. Like you can never stop learning about this, and I probably will be dying knowing nothing about wine. But that's what it is. But yeah, so been dedicated to wine and made a career in Europe for the last 9 years, I guess. So very fresh out of the university. I came to Europe and start more taking a concentration into white wine production.
And I'm sorry, were you born in Rias Baixas, or is that your home area?
No, I'm originally from Chile, South America. So probably that will be just my wine background, that I came from a wine country, from the New World. But I made, well, as I told you, very, very fresh after my university years, I came to Europe and I landed in Germany, where I worked in the Mosel River for almost 7 years, 7 beautiful years, where I learned a lot. I traveled a lot and I met so many interesting people about wine. I worked in a small family winery in the Mosel River called Heimat Löwenstein. So I was lucky enough to be able to be responsible for those beautiful vineyards and terraces, and very dramatic terraces and landscape along the lowest part of the Mosel River. And so I did 7 years there, working with this family, where I learned so much about wine and how to communicate about wine and how to understand this not as a commodity, just as like more of a cultural factor. So yeah, thank you to Reinhard Löwenstein for mentoring me, I guess, in that direction. And then in 2019 or late 2018, a Spanish family offered me or contact me and offer me the possibility to be in charge of Granzaban, which is in Rias Baixas, which actually was a kind of like a corner of the world that was actually making a lot of noise in the last 10 years. Like, it's a very high quality, very high end whites and beautiful wine. It's very interesting because of the also very dramatic landscape with the high trellis and everything. So I was pretty much interested in this area, and I said, like, I love Germany. I love the most. Riesling is my passion, but if maybe someday I have to look somewhere else, probably will be my call. And well, it turned out to be that way. So I moved to Rias Baixas in May 2019. Okay. So 2019 will be my first vintage in this probably one of the first houses of the area. It has probably one of the oldest stories as a winery in the area. So it is a lot of responsibility for somebody that's not actually from there originally to understand the tradition and the cultural factor behind it. It's not just winemaking, you know.
So I have that. So that's got to be such a contrast in your mind shift of harvest. So from the Moselle and those terraced vineyards to those beautiful paras, the pergolas of Rias Baixas. Like, how is it different harvesting other than, you're not probably harnessed in for the pergolas? Like, how did that differ?
It's actually in terms of organization and talking with people and teaching how what it needs to be picked, what needs to be sorted out, and everything is pretty similar, I guess. Right. You have to be very on top of the picking. So let's say in Germany, we were very concentrated about the quality of the material that goes into the winery. Also, of course, in Rias Baixas, let's say that the logistics of it in Rias Baixas, even though the wind with their arms up could be very, very tiring, the logistics is a little bit easier because you're not dealing with, like a near-death experience all the time, as you do have in the Mosel. They're both way different, I guess, in a way, but because it's actually also culturally speaking, the people are from different origins, so they have nothing to do with each other. Here's more of a Latin factor, so more of an actually having a lot of fun and doing the picking, and maybe not being as disciplined as in Germany, so it's actually both of them has a lot of pros and things are very, very unique. But let's say like the more of in terms of the people, more than actually the action of cutting the grapes, because we're concerned about the same stuff. We're actually in both of the places are kind of like, but try this hotspots of the world. So actually you have to be very on top in order to sort out everything that needs to be sorted out. So in terms of the action, it will be actually pretty similar.
I think about when I see the paras, those pergolas, I have a reconstructed shoulder. And I think there's no way I can, my left arm goes much higher than my right arm. I would have to be on a step stool or whatever to try to get to them. But
they do because the trellis go up to 2 meters.
Oh,
let's say the average hive of I mean, you will totally be fine with it. I'm sure. So like there's many people that actually walk with a little stool in order to manage to get the grapes.
Yeah, I'm just thinking my arms over my head. Their shoulders must be so strong, where, for us in our area, everybody's backs are sore because everybody's bent over, harvesting. So it actually always intrigues me how different regions have adapted to. Now we know that the pergolas are because of the environment that they're grown in. You had mentioned the botrytis, right? You need the mist that comes in is beneficial, but it can also be detrimental. So that's where these pergolas have come from. But it's always intriguing to me how these adaptations to all with the same singular goal to make the best quality fruit.
Exactly. That's the thing. That's the final goal, definitely.
So before we get too involved, can you just explain sort of to my listeners where Rias Baixas is? Like, how does somebody visit there? How can they get to you?
I guess probably the easiest way to get there, it will be because there's more flight connections because of the Camino de Santiago. It will be Santiago de Compostela, which is the capital of the let's say of the state. Our state is Galicia. Galicia is in northwest Spain, right above Portugal. And probably the most well-known city or the most visited city around the area, it will be Santiago de Compostela because of the church and the cathedral and all the pilgrims that actually people that do all these long walks for many days that ended up in Santiago de Compostela. So it's a very visited corner, and so and you will be right in the heart of the Rias Baixas, not farther than maybe 30 minutes from there.
Oh, okay.
By car, by car or by train, of course. So if you look at the map in this corner of of Spain, you're going to see that there's a lot of kind of like zigzag or like masses of water going inland, and that's what we call a ria. And Rias Baixas will mean if you translate from the Galician language, it will be that the lower rias or the lower masses of water going inland. There's actually 4 of them, and that's how actually all the denomination is displayed. So within Galicia, we have 5 different appellations, and within Rias Baixas, which would be like the most coastal one, we have also 5 different sub areas.
Perfect. And once they're there, it's easy to get around, right? Like they can go from one of the sub appellations to another rather easily.
Yeah, it's not that far away actually. Probably will take you maybe 2 hours from top to bottom or something like that, from maybe a little bit more. But I mean, you can go through it either with a train or just rent a car. It's not expensive, and you can actually have a look on all the area. It's a beautiful area full of beautiful beaches, and also if you move a little bit inland, you're going to find like this old, very traditional villages, which are also amazing to visit. And so no, it's actually very easy to move around.
Perfect. And so now Rias Baixas is really dedicated to Albarino. So let's talk about the grape itself. So do we know its parentage?
I mean, it's, like it has been related to Riesling for many years. At least that was the thought about it. It has been already demonstrated. It's actually a native grape variety from North Portugal and southern Galicia. So there has been different stories going on. Some of them very romantic. I'll tell you a couple of them if you want. But if you go strictly to parenting, like there's no relationship between Riesling and Albarino. If you go to wine, you might find or you might not find some similarities in the young wines, but very rarely. I mean, like there's some. I'm going to say like, okay, this takes me maybe to Germany for more of a Rheinhessen, Rheingau area more than the Mosel. I would say that has nothing to do with the Mosel. That could you maybe put in the situation where you can understand there's a relationship between those 2 grape varieties, but there actually has been proven that it's not. So in parenting, it's just another maybe it says that it's a relative from another local white variety that's called Caño Blanco. This will be probably the closer relative to it, but it is a great variety. It has been developed and evolved in this area.
I want to hear one of those romantic stories. What's one of those romantic stories of how Albarino got to Rias Baixas?
Well, they used to believe that it was a great variety that the monks in the 12th century brought from Central Europe to here. But it has already been proven now that the grape variety is from there. But the know-how, though, like these monks moved from the Burgundy area to Pontevedra, so a city nearby, and actually probably the know-how was brought with them, how to cultivate the grapes, how to cultivate this local grape. There are some other theories that said that actually the grape variety was brought here from the 5th century, as a way before with some of these Germanic originally cultures and tribes or something. And as they were all the way pilgriming towards this area, they brought the grape variety with them. But as I said before, it has been proven already that it's a grape variety native from here. Then it has been cultivated here in the area for over 1,000 years. So yeah, it's from Galicia. Nothing to say about
it. So talking about Galicia, it is actually like when you look at pictures of it, because I've unfortunately never been there, but when you look at pictures of it, it is very reminiscent of Ireland. It is so green. It's got like I'm guessing that's just because of the Rias that are coming in. It provides that environment that makes it so green.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's an oceanic, it's an Atlantic weather, and also you have all this a very long coast, and so it gives you kind of like this cliff, like
the cliffs of Moher.
Yeah, exactly. So you have kind of like that feeling, and moreover, also the culture comes from the Celts. So actually, people from Galicia have nothing to do culturally, or the roots are not the same as the rest of Spain. So it's a very particular area. And when you see some locals playing music, you're gonna see the bagpipes, and you're gonna see the how do you call it, tambourine, and so they're way more related to that part of the world than the rest of Spain. And and it's rainy. So that's how you have all this green color and those extend green surface as you have in Ireland. So yeah, it reminds you a lot of like Ireland.
It really is. One day I'm going to make it there. I'm going to make it there. But it is so beautiful. Every time I just look at it, I'm like, yeah, that's on my bucket list. That's high up there. That is high up there on my bucket list. So let's talk about, one of the reasons why I love Albarino is that salinity that just is there with it. So can you talk about what are if somebody has never had Albarino before, what can they expect in an Albarino?
Well, you definitely will expect a very refined, elegant wine with it could be very aromatic in its young period, very, very flowery, very fruity, very expressive. Let's say in this fruitiness, you will have either a very cheerful wine or a more serious one. But once you have tried an Albarino that has been in the bottle for a couple of years, you're gonna see that it completely evolves to something more intense, more complex, more let's say in a different layer of complexity in terms of like it's not just a fruity expression anymore. You have the tobacco, or you have coffee, or you have toffee, or it evolves in completely different aspect of the variety. So let's call it, it's a very how do you call that? The amount of expression that you can get from this variety is very wide. I mean, but if you're looking for a very refreshing, very tense, almost nervous, almost electric in the palate.
Oh, I like that, electric in the palate. I like that.
Yeah, it will definitely be this wine, and the salinity, which is something very particular. Many people define it as minerality, but it's too much of a complex subject. So I'd rather to explain what it is for me. It's this salty, slightly metallic aftertaste that is very, like, whenever you're learning about wine and you hear about the salinity of wine, I will definitely say, if you want to understand it, definitely try these wines, or try an Albarino from Rias Baixas, because it's very there. There's nothing covering it. It's very there, and it's very obvious. And year after year. So why is that about them? Nobody knows. It's just a effect or a cause of the terroir expression of this grape variety being cultivated here, as I told you, for the last 1,000 years in this granitic soil. So that's the expression that it goes into the wine. So if you're looking for all the range of complexity from fruity to a more complex, serious wine, but with the main or with the backbone of salinity and tense acidity, you definitely will be going to these wines, or this will be my first call to go to.
And, I think that's something from when I first found Albarino those years ago. I think the concept was, you got to drink this now. Albarino back then was, it's a drink now wine. You buy it, you want to drink it within, kind of like the rosé trend, right? You buy it and you drink it. It's not everything. Yeah. And over these years, that's changed. There are Albarinos that you now want to lay down and they can age before you drink it. You don't need to consume it in that vintage that it gets released anymore. And it's nice to see that evolution. It's nice to see how over the years, one, people are recognizing Albarino, and two, how they're understanding that, and I don't mean this as a negative, but like back then, it wasn't thought of as like, ooh, this high quality wine that you're going to cherish. It was, this is a good wine to drink right now. And now people are understanding that it is a complex wine. And as you said, it does evolve in the bottle. And if you can have the patience, which is tough, but if you can have the patience, you're going to be rewarded with this nice, evolved, aged Albarino. And it's something that's nice to see is coming around.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with what you say. I wouldn't say that all the wines being produced in the denomination are done or are thought to be aged in the bottle. Not all of them. I mean, like, of course, like the conception of it from society has changed a little bit, and it is changing, and it's evolving. So yeah, of course, historically, or let's say in the last 30, 40 years, this wine in Spain or in let's call it more in Spain, is conceived as a wine, or is understood as a wine that has to be drink very fast, right? Like maybe in the export, like maybe in the rest of the world, they have a little bit more of understanding of okay, well, look, you have acidity here, you have very complex aromas. Maybe this will be like a Riesling, or maybe this will be follow the same path of a Chardonnay or something like that. But in Spain, they were more strict about that. This is a young wine, and it should be drink young. But yeah, but the idea, the mind about it has changed, and there's more people talking about like aging Albarinos, or Albarino that actually has a time in the barrel, and let's say like not all the wines, because most of the wines are brought in the market very early, so they have, let's say, they have less tools in order to maintain their properties along the years in the bottle, because they are thought for the fresh market wine that have been made for that. So I wouldn't call that all of the wines of the appellation are going to age beautifully, but if you go to the wines that are a little bit more elaborated, wines that have been in the barrel, or wines that have been produced in these big vats, and or that has been in stainless steel for 2, 3, or 4, or even more years on the full lease, or on the fine lease, or they have worked the lease. Of course, there are wines that they're on a different level of complexity and in a different league, and of course they're going to age perfectly, because you have all the factor, or the thing that you need in this equation to obtain a wood wine that's going to be amazing in 7 years or in 10 years.
So I don't know if this can be answered or not, but like, why do you think Albarino is just like Rias Baixas is just the perfect place for Albarino? We have a lot of New World, or United States now are making Albarino because people have become aware of it, and even for us, where we have, California has that coastal influence, the Albarinos, they're not the same. They're not that same, textural feeling. They some of them have some salinity, but it's different. So why do you think Albarino is perfect for Rias Baixas, that gives you that uniqueness of this grape?
Well, I guess probably one of the biggest factors is that, like, actually it is a grape variety that has evolved in this corner of the world. And moreover, of course, yeah, I have tried some New World Albarinos, like from Chile or from the United States. And of course, there's a different level of radiation in those areas. Here in the Rias Baixas, it's not just the coastal influence, because it's very important in order to maintain the cold temperatures during the summer. It's a combination of that, and also it's very cloudy. So in order to maintain this acidity, to maintain the tension in the palate, you need a corner of the world where it's actually not very sunny, so the grapes don't burn out all their natural acids. So in this area on Rias Baixas, actually we need to start. But still, even in 21st century and with the whole global warming thing going on, which is real, very real, and also in Rias Baixas, but we're still struggling. Actually, the last two vintages, for example, the last three vintages, 19, 20, and 21, actually too high. I said like too much acidity, almost.
Okay.
High malic acid, and so actually we still don't know. We still don't know what is going to happen in the future, because like, you know, if you read like, you know, global warming from the book, you probably will be thinking, okay, higher alcohol and lower acidity. You know, we can apply to certain parts of the world, but in Rias Baixas actually has maintained in 21 we have higher acidity than in 20, and in 20 higher acidity than in 19. Wow. So actually what is going to happen, we don't know. But what I can assure you is actually in this pod, or whether our grapes are being produced, it's still being kind of like in a bubble, a little bit of isolated of what is happening in the rest of the world, or what is happening actually in Galicia inland. Wow. You know, and another big important factor is the granitic soils. What we have here is granitic sandy soils, which are very, like, as the amount of rain here is insane. They are very decomposed, and you have different levels of oxidation that gives you kind of like a different map of the area. So we have granitic soils in mostly all the area where the grapes are being produced, but there's only in Galicia there's more than 28 different kind of granitic soil, granitic rock. So that's going to give you some these different aspects of the variety. But this is something that I have not studied not that long. So like I'm kind of like getting into it. But I will say that it's the confluence of this factor, which is actually the definition of terroirs. If you have the soil, you have the mesoclimate conditions, and last but not least, it will be like the cultural factor of it, like the know-how of the people, how they still maintain the classic trellis, high trellis, even though, of course, like the more industrial aspect of the viticulture here, of course, it's changing to more traditional, like more contemporary ways of producing the grapes. But some of us will stick to the parra and pergola, and of course that brings that extra, or like that third factor into this equation, which makes this part of the world the best vineyards to produce Albarino.
I think Albarino could click its heels and say there's no place like home, and just stay in Rias Baixas. Sure. So the DO actually, when it first started, it was actually originally called Albarino, right? And then the EU came in and said, we don't like that.
Yeah,
right? Exactly. So that's when it got changed to Rias Baixas, and then, but it only had 3 sub-AVAs, and now there are sub-appellations, and now there's 5, right?
Yeah, there's 5. Yeah. Now we have in the northest part, we have the Ulla, which is it receives the name because there's a river right next to it. It's called Ulla. Then we have the Salnés Valley, where we are located. Then we're moving south, and then we have Sotomayor, which is a very small one along the Ria de Vigo. So the fourth Ria of the 4 Rias Baixas. And then we have El Rosal, which will be actually the part that is that's actually on the border with Portugal.
Okay.
And Condado de Tea, which would be like a little bit more inland.
Okay. And
like let's say Salnés will be the Salnés will be probably the one that has like the biggest territory along the coast. It's also the biggest of the all five. It would have the biggest territory along the coast and doesn't have much of an inland influence.
Is it so? It's the biggest region. Is it the largest under vine also? Does it have the most plantings?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Definitely the most.
I mean, Rias Baixas, if I'm not making a mistake, I think it will be more than 2,000 and something hectares. And we have 4,000, a little bit more than 4,000 hectares in the whole appellation. So it will definitely be the biggest.
Okay, cool. And then, so let's talk about Granzaban. So it started in 1980, right? And wow, where can you give us a little background on the history? Where did it come from? What's where did the name come from? All of that stuff.
Yeah, sure. So the winery was founded in 1981, and it's the result of a dream of one local family. The Otero family, they were pretty successful in a different business in the canned seafood industry. And in the 80s, they decided to jump into, which actually canned seafood industry is big in Galicia. It's very important there. It's a very important industry there. So he decided to jump into something different, another business that also have a kind of like that relationship with this area, with Galicia. And Albarino was kind of like the way, but he traveled. Manuel Otero, the founder, traveled a lot through Alsace and through Germany, and brought back Galicia, kind of like that influence with them. You can see that in the style of the bottle and the style of the labels, full of details. That's very kind of like Germany, Rheingau area. Yes. Like.
I'm just going to show it to the people who are watching, and I'm hoping it can come through with the green light. But yes, it does look very German. The writing is German, and even the label looks that way.
So he wanted kind of like a French chateau, an Alsatian chateau, but a little bit more of a Spanish touch. And he was a very creative mind, so he kind of like created the idea of the label and everything and the concept and the winery. And if you look at the winery, it is actually kind of like a chateau. But the family decided to sell the property in the 2000s. That's why in 2017, a different family that has been in the wine business for years already in Rioja, in the northern part of Rioja, decided to invest after I think it was around 10 pretty successful years in the red wine industry. They decided to jump into whites, and they actually looked first in the Mosel River. That's how we met. Back in the day, yeah, but well, Germany, very hard to find something. So they decided to invest in Galicia, and when it worked out with Granzaban, and they took over the property in 2017. They bought the property in 2017. So it has been already 4 vintages with the new property. Of course, I came also with a new property, and this is pretty much like we're just concentrating and kind of like maintain the same style as the house had for the last 40 years, because this is one of the first houses that actually they kind of like started with the movement of the creation of the Rias Baixas I'm talking about the organization, the office, okay. The Rias Baixas. This back in the day was like 3 or 4 wineries, and this one was one of those. So it's part of the history. It's very related to the whole story or the whole journey of this appellation, and that's why. Me as a winemaker and the property as the owners, they didn't want to kind of like intervene much in the style of the wines or the stylistic of the wine. That's actually we maintain the labels, we maintain the shape of the bottle, and we just focus on everything to maintain the style of the house. But of course, always improving. Always there's place for improvement in terms of quality, in terms of the idea of the concept that I visualize in my head that I want to go with these wines, and also they're very open to the creation of new wines or the new ideas. Very eager to, as they have done in the other winery in Rioja, and to invest in sustainability and to work with different universities and to develop research as as the owner is actually an ex college university professor in
okay.
biochemistry.
So biochemistry, perfect for wine.
Very pro science, very pro science. So actually, that's what I have been done, or what we have been done in the last 4 years of story of this very short part of the story of Granzaban.
And now, a word from our sponsor. Looking to be in the know about Dracaena wines? Want to be the first to know about our new releases and special offers? All you need to do is sign up for our newsletter. There is no commitment necessary, and I promise you we won't spam your mailbox with loads of messages. Need another reason to sign up? Quite possibly the best reason? You'll immediately get a discount code for 10% off your first purchase and be privy to newsletter-only discounts. Let Dracaena Wines turn your moments into great memories. Visit our website, www.dracaenawines.com, or use the link in show notes to sign up. It will take you less than a minute, but the rewards will last a lifetime. So let's look at this. This is the green label. Okay, yes. So it is Etiqueta Verde, so green label. Can you tell it, this is kind of like Granzaban's entry into Albarino. Welcome to Albarino. Exactly. So can you tell us a bit about this one?
Yeah, well, definitely will refer to this one, like you said, like it's kind of like the first step of what we do with Albarino. This is our youngest Albarino from our classic portfolio, and I would say this is the classic wine from is the classic Albarino from Rias Baixas. It's a small, let's say, it's a classic flavor of what you find here. It's a very straightforward wine with a lot of tension. On the nose is more on the cold notes, more than in the tropical fruity expression. I will refer to it as more of a cold, like white meat peaches and flowers, and more it's very citrus like and kind of like and slightly herbal. That's always my interpretation about this wine. But mainly what I will say that is a classic thing about this wine is the palate. It's very straightforward, a lot of tension. You have this saltiness, this salinity in the aftertaste, which it will teletransport you directly here, and it will say, okay, and I can make no mistake. This is an Albarino for Rias Baixas. From this wine, all of the other wines are a little bit more complex, are a little bit more wider than this wine.
And the green label sees no oak, right? That's just all stainless.
The green label is just stainless steel. So I didn't mention this before, but the way to work in Rias Baixas, how we produce the grapes, our state owns around 20 hectares, but we work with another 90 families, and each family own probably maybe an average it will be 600 square meters, 600 square meters till maybe 1 hectare average. So it's what we call small scale agriculture. Right. And that's actually, it's a very particular way to produce grapes, and it's spread all over the Rio. I mean, there's almost no winery actually that own 100% the whole property, the whole vineyard. So we work side by side with these families all year long in order to produce high quality grapes at the very end. So Etiqueta Verde it's a cuvée of the grapes being produced almost in the 95% in Salnés. So that's why I call it a classic wine from Salnés, being produced by these families that work with us. We're lucky enough, we have contract with the same families almost 30 years. So we know each other very well, and we advise them. Actually, it's a lot of work, but also very rewarding, I guess. So yeah, Etiqueta Verde will be a cuvée from the grapes being produced by these families, and in 95 of them are located in Salnés.
Wow. And then I think your next level up would be the amber bottle.
Exactly. Etiqueta Amber. Etiqueta Amber, which it's probably the most well-known wine of the winery. It's a wine that's very well positioned in the market, and it's a wine that has been that stays longer in our cellar. It's a wine that we release later, and we release it in the midsummer or maybe at the end of the summer. It depends on the year. So it's a wine that has been on the lease for around 8 months. It's also just stainless steel, but let's say for me, the granitic soil, the wines from granitic soil, they have a very strong entrance, and then kind of like tied up. And so what we do with this wine is that we do like a constant batonnage in the very first months after fermentation, in order kind of like to cheat on the granitic profile and give it a little bit more of broadness, a little bit more of palate. So if you go to the Etiqueta Verde, it will be a very straightforward wine, a classic stainless steel wine, very aromatic, very expressive. And then you go to Amber, which will be more on the muscle, meaty. They can go perfect with dishes that are a little bit more elaborated. And so here we have around 8 till 10 months on the full lease, and with a lot of action during the first maybe 3 or 4 months. After that, I don't touch it anymore. I just leave it there and to evolve. So you have a more of a complex, wider, let's go more opulent version of classic Albarino from Salnes. Which vintage do you have there? Which vintage?
This is the 2020.
Okay.
So yeah, wow, pulling it up to your nose is, I don't know if you saw my face as soon as I put it up. It was like, they talk about low aromatics, medium aromatics, pronounced aromatics. This is like off the chart aromatics. It is so like, it wasn't even close to my nose, and I could get that aromatics. That salinity, the minerality that you're talking about, and then a peach, a white flower. It's and almost there's a very little hint of a toastiness, like bread that is on the lowest number of on the toaster, where it's just that caramelized, caramelization of it. And I didn't taste the green the green label today, but the palate, this one seems a little bit fuller bodied than what I remember the green one and the leaves, I'm guessing.
Yeah, actually, well, the Etiqueta Verde or green label is the perfect one to go solo. I mean, if you're like in a summer afternoon and just drink the wine, and you're really gonna enjoy it as solo. Or maybe with a top up, but it will be a very light top up, very like raw material, just put in your table. Like if you go with a fish, it will be just a fish like side and a little bit of olive oil, and that's pretty much it. And it's gonna go perfect with this wine. But this wine has a way more let's say greasiness or like a velvety feeling. That's what we try to do with the batonnage, and it shows a completely different aspect of it. Of course, it's a different selection of grapes. The grapes that goes into this wine come mainly from our Tremoedo estate, which is the vineyards that we have right next to the winery, and the lowest part of the vineyard that we have right next to the winery, because in the higher part we produce the other two wines. So it's a different selection of grapes that normally they communicate this expression, this more over the top, but at the same time very elegant aspect of an Albarino.
It is elegant is an excellent word for it, because it really is, and it is complex. Oh my gosh! And there is that viscosity, and that it's a fuller bodied than the green, and but the I can't. It's still, the finish is still going. I'm salivating. The finish is still going, and I haven't taken a sip in a couple of minutes. It is. I think that it can be good on its own, but this is wonderful to have with a food pairing also.
Definitely.
Yeah. Wow. I'm going to save that glass and drink more of that. And it's only 10 a.m. here. It's only 10:30, but that's okay. I'm drinking under your time zone today. And then the next up is a blue label, and it is Don Alvaro de Bazan. So, and it is a completely different label. So the green, the verde, and the amber have an image of the chateau and the vineyards, and this has an image of a ship at sea. So
I'll tell you everything about it. Like, that's the one that I have in the glass.
Okay.
let's say this is the head of our portfolio, of our classic portfolio, and this is a wine that we don't do every year. It's a wine that we just do in those vintages, which we think is really outstanding. It comes from a very particular point of our state, which is right behind the winery. The winery is kind of like it was built kind of like inside of a little hill, like a very like it's kind of like a soft slope. And in the top part of the slope, of course, it's vineyards all around. And the top part of the slopes is where we produce these grapes for this wine, which is a very small production. We don't produce when we produce them, we go from 6,000 bottles to 10,000 bottles. So no, it's no more than that. Why here? Because well, as I told you before, it rains a lot in this area. Like I mean, like just average Galicia will be maybe twice Dublin, to put you like, or maybe twice Seattle, to put you like in an amount of rain. So it's very extremely raining. So we're talking about where our vineyards are located. It will be around 2,000 millimeters a year, which is crazy.
Wow, that's a lot.
Luckily, we have sandy granitic soil, so the water, the rain goes really fast into the, which has pros and cons. Of course, when it's hot and dry, there is extremely dry. But when it's not, which is actually probably the most often situation to find, when it's not dry, the water goes very fast towards the lowest part of the vineyard. And in this and this top of the hill, you're gonna see that, and it's really easy to appreciate. If you go in during the summer, you're gonna see that you look down, and Albarino is a very vigorous pond, so you're gonna see that everything's green, and everything's kind of is covered like a ceiling. But if you look up, you're gonna see like the same plants, because we're all planted in the same, even though they're different clones, but they were all planted in the early 80s. So you're gonna see that there are still been thick trunks, but they're not that leafy. I mean, they're not that vigorous. They're more contained because they don't have that water resource that the other ones have. So what you're gonna find here is a smaller cluster, small berries, probably one more touched by the sun, as the canopy is not that thick. So you don't have 3 layers of leaves. You just have kind of like holes in it. We do also a little bit of leaf flagging in this area in order to maintain the grapes out of botrytis the longest, so we can harvest a little bit later. But we have mainly what you have there is concentration. That's the best way to describe it. So we take the grapes from there, we produce this wine, and then we follow this wine for almost 2 years, because it has been 2 years in the lease before being bottled, and then a year in the bottle, and then a year in the bottle.
Right. So this one is a vintage 2018.
It's vintage 2018, and it's still been extremely fresh. It's of course, there's a different level of complexity in this wine. So you're not gonna find that peachy, pineapple-y aromas maybe that you can or flowery aromas that you find in a very young Albarino. You're gonna be concentrated more in the ripe yellow fruit, kind of like red yellow berries, and also you have kind of like this soft tobacco touch, and maybe like more like a red tea kind of note.
Wow.
That's what this wine is telling to me right now. And it's a different vintage. 2019 was a warmer vintage than the one that you have. You had 2020 was a little bit colder, and 2020 a lot of acidity, a lot of tension. 2018 more broadness, more roundness, more of an opulent, big guy wines. So for this level of complexity, or for this one, that's what I love. 18. So it was a warmer year, and it kind of like it takes you out of the classic profile of Albarino, because they are big wines. I love them. So that's what we have here. Don Álvaro de Bazán. And about the picture.
Yes.
Yeah, Álvaro de Bazán is a sailor, believed as never been defeated, and believed as being related with the originally family that owned this whole area, that they named this whole area Álvaro de Bazán.
Oh, okay.
Which means Bazán's land. And this family has been thought to be related to this kind of like war hero. So that's why the previous property of the house named this wine, that we, as I told you before, so we produced in 15, and then we did the jump to 18, and then we did in 2010, 13 also, and 14. And this year now we're not currently selling the 18, and probably Still undecided, but probably we're gonna go for 19 as well, and 20 as the wines are showing beautifully, and I'm very happy with those wines. So yeah, I mean, if we can do it every year, we're gonna do it every year, of course.
Wow, that sounds amazing. And I don't have a bottle opener with me in my little room here, my little studio, but I'm going to have to open that one and give it because those notes sound absolutely incredible. Although my husband is traveling, so he'll probably be upset if I open that without him. So we might have to wait a little bit for me to open that one. Now,
No worries. Just let me know your thoughts whenever you're excited.
I absolutely will. Oh, I'm excited. So you actually mentioned that you have different clones, and the thing I try to explain to newbie wine people is there's clones for every grape variety out there. Like there's differences, just like there's differences in people, there's differences in grapes, but certain grape varieties are known for their clones, like Pinot Noir, right? It's the 777, it's the Colombar, all this stuff, right? So Albarino, you mentioned you have clones, but then I don't know if I heard you correctly. Are they basically interspersed in the same vineyards?
Yeah.
Or do you have them separately?
The main difference is there's not much development in terms of clone variety in this grape variety.
Okay.
Back in the day, back in the 80s, the main focus, it was a grape that can actually get sugar, like alcohol. That was the goal, alcohol and production. So there wasn't, back in the 80s when this land was planted, there wasn't much done in terms of commercial clones. So they probably got like a couple of them commercial, maybe 3 of them, and the other ones were more like a clonal, like a massal selection. But the information is very diffuse about what was actually planted that time, because they didn't have that development in terms of clone. There wasn't that and moreover, the information that you get, it could not necessarily be actually what is in the paper, not necessarily be what is actually in the vineyards. So as we know, there might be from 9 till 13 different clones, but commercial clones, and with name as it is, actually nowadays we still have very little. Have very little. So probably, so my theory about it is actually probably there has been maybe 4 different clones. There were commercial clones back in the day when the vineyard was planted, and the rest named as clone was actually more of a massal selection.
Okay, cool. And then the vineyards, I know you said that you have an estate, vineyards, but then you also source. So do you know what your estate vineyard, at what altitude is that? And then what's your lowest altitude Albarino and what's your highest altitude Albarino? Or is it really not that big of a variation?
It's not that much of a difference. It's not that much of a range. I mean, if we compare our Tremoedo estate with the state where Villalobos has been produced, the ones that we're gonna talk about next. Yeah, it might be a different one because the other ones is closer to the sea level. It's closer to the sea, but it's not much of a difference. But you do have difference within the vineyards, from the very top to the lowest point. That might be more than 20 meters or maybe 30 meters.
Oh, okay.
So it's not that big, but the difference that you have in the depth of the soil is what's the big deal for us, at least. What gives you that difference I told you before. In the lowest part, you have very little soil and a lot of water resources. And the lowest part, you have more to dig in. But it depends on where you are. If it's kind of like a mountain, and of course, in the top part, you're gonna see like the rock is going more up. But it's not in our case. In our case, it's a very soft slope. So there you have less water, but the roots can go a little bit deeper. So that's what you get the main difference. But we don't have much difference between height in our lowest or our top plots, because it's just more like a flat area with soft slopes.
But that in its own right is kind of cool, because that, everybody talks about how altitude affects the grapes or whatever. No, not very many people talk about what's going on under the soil and how that affects how the grapes grow. And it really does. I mean, as a biologist, it really does make a big difference of if the roots are going shallow and horizontal versus if they've got to go down before they can go out. That makes a big difference in what the grapes themselves can produce.
Yeah, of course, definitely. And it's very obvious to see. Like if you go during the summer, you're gonna understand perfectly what I mean with this. with the differences in the vigorousness of the plant, which for me is probably the biggest factor in order to produce high quality grapes. What you have in like in the meso conditions in the canopy where the grapes are actually located, what is happening there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's so cool. So you have the Vega Lobos vineyard, which is wolf site, right?
Yeah.
That's okay. And I'm kind of interested because it says that it is known to be or thought to be a mythical place. So what's the story behind that?
I mean, it's mythical because for the Iberic wolf or the wolf from Spain, or the local wolf, used to hang around in this area, which is not very common to see nowadays. Nowadays, it's heading like there's more wolves like now with the day as they expect and think. But it's called Cova de Lobos as it is a place where the wolves used to hang around in this area, and we call the wine Vega Lobos, which Vega would be like a flat, more of a lower territory or land, but actually can easily be flooded. And it's sort of what happened. It's right next to a river. So we do believe that it's actually this kind of like a certain vibe or energy in this area, as it's completely surrounded by water, by moving water. So while it's actually a very spiritual corner of a vineyard, so it used to hold or used to be kind of like this refugee for such a rare, mythical or rare and particular animal as it is wolf, and it's surrounded by all this water mass.
So cool. I love it. Now this bottle brings on a whole different, it's still the same Granzaban shape, but we have a completely different label, more of a French label, like the chateau.
Classic,
and waxed here. So tell us about this wine and, why it's so different than the others. And this is also a 2018.
Exactly. Well, this wine started in 18 with a new property as kind of like an experiment. It was kind of our approach, and a very shy approach into fermenting with skins.
Oh, okay.
So the idea was to do the idea wasn't to do an orange, a full all the way orange wine, and it wasn't kind of like a try which different profile can you obtain from this wine if you ferment it in contact with skins. And so what we did kind of like a cryo maceration, as we put kind of layers of grapes and layers of ice. What do you call that?
Dry ice.
Dry ice and layers of grapes and dry ice. So this kind of like freeze completely, and all the water in the grapes also it was completely frozen. So that kind of like producing a hyper extraction. As of course the cells within the berry break because of the frozen water, and we let it just like that to gain a little bit of temperature. And as the dry ice was all the time sublimating, it was completely protected from oxidation. And during 4 days, it was just dripping and dripping and dripping. And it was it's really amazing to see actually that the must comes completely clear out of it, although that it has been exposed to air for 4 days.
Wow.
And whenever we press this already, we put part of a certain proportion of the skins to ferment with the must. And after fermentation, what of course this was made before my arrival. I arrived just in this period right after fermentation. What we have there, it was extremely rustic and raw wine, which actually kind of like show more of a terpenic kind of face of the variety.
Okay.
It kind of like reminds you more like of a Moscatel or kind of like a Gewürztraminer profile. Extremely flowery, kind of like dry fig, dry nuts, kind of like aspect of every verbena, but the flower, it's extremely there. It's like very evident there. And we were so crazy about the result about this wine that we decided to bottle this wine as a new wine, and kind of like it's the first or the start of a new part of our portfolio will be actually the new from Granzaban. So probably we're gonna be adding some new members to the family in this coming years. But this is the first one. That's why it has a different label, a different bottle, and a different stylistic. As it is, we want to go as far as we can from our classic portfolio, which will be like the very baroque and detail label, because that's for our classic Albarinos, and the new things that we're doing and that we start doing since 2017 actually it has this kind of like new face of which is still very classic and elegant face, but it has a new face of what we're doing. So it will be like the classic portfolio and the new from Granzaban.
That is so cool. I mean, just the whole science behind that concept, and thinking about, my brain is like going through the reactions that are happening as that's going on. That is so cool. And so this is going to be produced every vintage?
We did it in 2019, and we didn't do it in 2020 because we have a very little vintage.
Oh, okay.
And we did it again in 21. And we're very happy with those other two, with 19 and with 21. We're very happy. I mean, 21 is still a very, very young and fresh wine. It's still a long way to go. But the 19 probably, I'm really decided to release it as a second edition of Vega Lobos. As we're completely thrilled with the profile of the wine. It follows exactly the same path, same complexity, same broadness, like that broad palate. It's just greasy, and it's such a different face of these classic wines that goes completely outside of our classic portfolio. So actually I'm very because it's just fun.
Yeah. It sounds awesome. It sounds absolutely incredible. That it just sounds amazing. And so with that, and reaching outside and doing all these things, I mean, quite honestly, Granzaban has received some major recognition, right? So you recently got number 37 and 55 in the top 100 Spanish wines by James Suckling, right? And then the Verde, which honestly, I mean, to call it an entry level, I think is not doing it justice, because I get why Granzaban calls it their entry level, but for people who are listening and who haven't had it, this is not an easy, just there's a wine there. This is a quality wine. It's just priced at an entry level, and it's just an amazing wine, vintage after vintage, because I have had a lot of it. And this got a 93 points. So obviously not an entry, score. I mean, and then the Vega Lobos got 96 points, like holy cow. And then also you got the blue label, the Don Alvaro de Vazan, got 94 points. So that's incredible to have across your spectrum so many great scores. You guys must be jumping for joy, celebrating, and of course thinking, what do we do next to keep it going, right?
Yeah, well, every vintage is a challenge. Moreover, into these wines are actually they're going to be tasted and consumed very shortly, or the year after the vintage. So every vintage is, for example, 2021 was extremely hard vintage. But of course, we're happy with the results, and we're happy that actually their wines are getting such recognitions. I completely agree with what you said with the term entry level. That's why I refer to it as the first step of what we do, or the first chapter of what we do with
I like that first chapter
what we do with Albarino, but also but maybe it's been put in that kind of like a range as it is the first wine of the offer. Is a wine. This is a classic wine that competes with many other classic wine with a classic profile from the Salnés Valley or from Rias Baixas. So that's what it fits into the profile. But actually, in the United States, we are very happy with how the wine has been received in the last at least in the last vintages that we have released that were under my team. So we're very happy.
I mean, those scores are outrageous. It's like what it does to me is show that it's consistency across the whole portfolio. Like, you could get one great score, but when your entire portfolio is getting these scores, it's showing that there's quality across the board. And it's okay, so I like the green label. Now, you know what, look at this. I'm going to go to that next step. It's so kudos to you and your team. And those are incredible scores. And so where can people find Granzaban? Like, I know, I don't know if you can answer this or not, because you're the winemaker and it's two different paths, but where in stores can people find you? Do you know that in the United States, where they can find you?
Our distributor in the United States is Urban in Golden State. And so whatever other distributors that are between the last customer and then there are actually, there's a wide range of distribution along the States. All of them, of course, the names escape to my mind right now, but they're very easy to find. Like you just go to European webpage, and you can see all the companies in the United States that are actually related to European.
And then what about social media? Does the winemaker know where you are in social media?
Yeah, of course. We have. We're in all of them, and Twitter, Instagram, and if you're looking for at Bodegas Granzaban,
okay,
you're gonna find us in Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter.
All right, awesome. And
of course, you can also visit our webpage, which is www.bodegasgranzaban.com.
Okay. And then my last question is, when I was scoping out your website, you have some pretty cool tasting experiences. So when we actually can get to visit Granzaban, can you explain some of those experiences? Because they were pretty cool.
Yeah, of course. We have a very professional team that takes care of either like couples or just wine lovers or groups of wine lovers. We have a very developed and professional team that take care of you and show you everything around vineyards, cellar, tasting. There's different options of different amount of wines that you can taste. Of course, all of them came with a tapa with local products, local muscles from the Ria, or when it's actually classic cuisine from Galicia, which is another level of good. It's very, very good. So don't hesitate to contact us through our webpage or Instagram or whatever is easier to you to find us and to organize a visit, because you're gonna be very well received, and our team that's in charge of tourism will be with you all the time and explain you everything from top to bottom.
Well, I want to thank you, Diego, for coming on and sharing all of these wines with me. I saved a little bit in my glass to share with you, and it will actually may make that right. So I always say slancha, which is the Gaelic, right? So but these wines are incredible. I have been a fan of Granzaban for a long time. We did taste them years ago, and I am always happy when I see them. And the thing is that I always know that if I buy it, it's going to be a quality bottle. So I thank you for that, and I appreciate you spending your time with me. And I shall say slancha.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you. This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoytbud. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Music is Wine by Kevens. Until next week, slancha.
You are so special, you even in the Bible. Give me the red wine.